Hi guys, this is Meeta Dikshit and today we're going to be talking about pranayam and the special features of pranayam. So last week we looked at meditative asanas and we understood why those form the basis of all pranayamic practices and also of every single higher yogic practice. Now this week the aim is to understand where pranayam comes from, what are the special features of pranayam, and how you can involve pranayam in your own daily yogic practice. So first of all, what does pranayam mean? So pranayam is made up of two key words, prana as well as ayam. Now prana refers to a very subtle life force that is sort of like an interface between your body and your mind. And this subtle life force develops itself in physical realities as the breath. So that is your prana, and ayam is the control or the retention of something. So these two words, prana and ayam, combine together to mean that pranayam is the control or the retention of your breath. And that is basically what pranayam means. Now, most of us think that breathing is a very involuntary process, but Indian yogis beg to differ because they believe that through pranayam, breathing can be made a sort of voluntary process. And how this is done is that there are certain locks and bandhas that we enable in our body to make the breath flow in a certain direction and to kind of observe how much breath is going into our body at what amount of time. So how we do that is really essential and is the key that differentiates pranayam from any other yogic practices. Now, one of the reasons we actually practice pranayam is because it affects a behavioral change in ourselves and it leads us towards subtler understandings of who we are. So for example, when you're doing something stressful or you're lifting a very heavy object or you're doing anything that puts a stress on your body and mind, your breathing becomes faster and you go into panic mode or rather fight or flight mode and your autonomic nervous system kickstarts. But when you're really calm and relaxed and you're doing something that is not stressful for you, you will notice that your breathing is slow. It's also very deep. Now, if our breathing gets impacted by what we do externally, then we must understand that if we impact our breathing directly, our external body functioning will also be impacted. So that's why Indian yogis decided to master the art of breathing and then in turn master the art of being and of behavioral change. So that is the point and the purpose of pranayam. Now, a few things to keep in mind while practicing pranayam. Number one, you need to be sitting in a meditative posture. Now, a meditative posture is basically one where you form a triangular base with your lower body and you keep your upper body erect and form a sort of electric circuit that allows you to enhance your own inner energy to the highest. If you are confused about what meditative postures are, please refer to my previous video where I've explained and described meditative postures in great detail. Now, the next thing that you need to keep in mind is that there is a ratio to the breath and the way that you breathe. Now, this ratio is in terms of your inhalation, retention, and exhalation of breath. Okay? In Sanskrit, this inhalation is called purak, your retention is called kumbhak, and your exhalation is called rechak. So these are the three Sanskrit words, and I'd really appreciate it if you tried to keep these in mind and referred to them because that's really where yogic knowledge came about from, and it's important to keep those words in mind as well. So Purak, Kumbhak and Rechak, and the ratio that we need to perform these pranayamic practices to is 1:4:2. Right? That's 1:4:2. So that means if you're counting it in seconds, then you inhale for 1 second, pause for about 4 seconds, and exhale for 2 seconds. So that is the ratio that you need to maintain in your pranayamic practices. Now, when we actually perform those in our video tutorials, you'll see what I mean by retaining the breath for that much time, because in pranayam, the retention of the breath is what matters the most, and that's really where all the magic happens. So this ratio is extremely important, 1:4:2. The next thing that you need to keep in mind is that pranayam has certain locks that we create in our own body. For example, in Ujjayi pranayam, we create a lock with our glottis, and so we kind of control the quantity of air that we're breathing in. And in Brahmari, we kind of close our 5 senses, and so we control again the manner in which we're breathing and performing pranayam. So there are certain locks in the pranayamic practices, but those are again for a much higher stage of pranayam. You wouldn't practice it necessarily in the initial stages. So these are the 3 key concepts you need to keep in mind. That first of all, you need to be in a meditative posture. Secondly, you need to keep the ratio in mind. And thirdly, there are bandhas and locks involved in your pranayamic practices, but these are slightly more complicated, and they should be done only under the guidance of an actual teacher and a guru, because there are chances of you not doing it correctly and then harming yourself because of the incorrect practice. So those are the key points to keep in mind. Now, certain textbooks have described pranayam in different ways. So the certain ancient Sanskrit books that talk about pranayam are Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, Hatha Yoga Pradipika, Gheran Samhita, and also the textbook called Shiva Samhita. Now, these books talk about pranayam in certain different ways. Both Patanjali and Hatha Yoga Pradipika explain that asanas should be done and mastered first before moving into the practice of pranayam. The reason is that when you're doing an asana, you're in a static movement and you're still focused on your breath. But when you're doing pranayam, you're even more in a static state and your entire attention is on your breath. So you really need to be able to master the asana practice to then be able to move into pranayam. However, certain pranayamic practices like Anulom Vilom and Brahmari can be introduced while you're learning and mastering your asana practice as well. So these are the key concepts that Patanjali Hatha Yoga Pradipika talked about. And then Gheran Samhita enlightened us about nadis, which are basically the channels, invisible channels in our body that are used to transfer this breath, right? So that's similar to how our nerves function, but it's specifically for the movement of the breath, and it's called nadis. It is believed that our body has 72,000 nadis, and that is what has been written in the ancient Indian scriptures. And lastly, also pranayam allows you to effect and to have a kundalini awakening. Like we discussed in the previous videos, kundalini is sort of a very sacred, essential life force that is situated at your perineum region. And if it gets activated, you'll have a surcharge of positive energy, or energy rather, within your body that you can use and work with. So this pranayamic practice also taps into the awakening of the kundalini energy and allows you to move forward on your spiritual journey. So that is really the essence, or sort of in a nutshell, what pranayam is all about. Again, this is a very theoretical perspective of what pranayam is. And next week, we'll be looking at the 8 different varieties of pranayam. Once we understand those varieties of pranayam, we'll actually begin to practice them and to see how we can do them. But as always, my advice to you would be that as much information and as much knowledge as you can gain from online platforms, please do take it all in, but definitely approach an offline yoga instructor or a credible trainer to help you with mastering this practice, because these are very, very subtle sciences. And if you only do it online, it will not give you maximum benefit. It is very important, therefore, to actually approach a yoga institute, anyone that's in your area, any yoga instructor that you trust and is credible. Please go to them and also master the art and this practice. So here we're just giving you a lot of information, hoping that it helps you, but we expect you to also go out and look for an offline yoga class and then imbibe the practice through that. So I hope this video has helped you understand the basis of pranayam, and next week we're going to look at the 8 classical varieties of pranayam as described in the ancient Indian textbooks. Until then, keep blasting.